Hey everyone, how you doing? It is Thursday, April 2nd. I'm sitting in a parking lot, just looking around, waiting to go into a grocery store. It's actually super crowded. I'm a little surprised when everything else has been a ghost town. And, I just decided I'm going to just film a video right now because actually one of the things I've been working on letting go of in this season is my perfectionism around things. If you know me personally, you probably wouldn't be surprised. There are some things that I have a level of perfectionism around. There's other things that you're like, there's no way he does, right? And so, but for me, I think I prevent myself from doing a lot of things because they have to be perfect, and so things don't get going. So I've really worked hard of just getting things out and just going with them. So for me, it means filming a video and just posting it to you without editing it or thinking much about it. Because I think what's really important right now in this season of life is I'm trying to think about where I have some experience or some level of quote unquote expertise that I can help you who maybe are struggling right now. I think all of us are struggling in some way. And so this all brings me back to something that I've been dwelling on a lot. And that is back in seminary, I would say probably in 1998, I read a book by an Old Testament scholar, Walter Brueggemann, brilliant guy. But the book I read in seminary was called The Message of the Psalms. And there was an idea in that book that when I read it, I'm like, I can't move forward in life without thinking in that paradigm. It's how you filter the world, if that makes sense. Something impacts you that much. And from that point on, 98 on, it comes up a lot. I've wrote about it in my book, The Anxious Christian. I've blogged about it. I've probably talked about it in a podcast. If I'm working with a client in counseling, I'm framing things sometimes in this way. If I'm working with a client doing executive coaching, I'm framing things in this way. He's just a brilliant person. And it's been a helpful paradigm to think of right now, kind of in this COVID-19 season. And so wherever you're coming from, some of you grew up maybe in a faith tradition, and some of this stuff will probably be really, really familiar in terms of the background of it. And some of you maybe didn't grow up in a faith tradition or went to church very little. It doesn't matter where you came from, what your tradition. I think this will resonate. And probably all of you listening have heard of a collection of writings centered right in the middle of the Bible called the Psalms. And the Psalms are full of all kinds of emotions. People go to them and turn to them when they're feeling really happy and on top of life. And they go to them when life is feeling like really down and depressed. The Psalms are a very just disorienting experience in many ways. And so this Old Testament scholar, Walter Brueggemann, in his book on the Psalms, he says literally that there are three types of Psalms in that collection of writings. And one type of Psalm, he says, is a Psalm of orientation, meaning life is oriented in a certain way. It's what we know as normal. It's the how things go kind of life. And so in that collection of writings, it might be the King David, saying, life is going really well. My kingdom is running smoothly. My enemies are at bay. There's all type of happiness and all types of growth and fruition in the land. Right? Life is normal. And then he said there's a psalm. Collection of Psalms that he calls them Psalms of disorientation, and that is life is now completely disoriented. It's upended from what used to be and what was normal. So that may be again David writing a psalm, and psalm, there's so many, but famous phrase, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me? Why have you abandoned me to my enemies in my time of need? And so life is disoriented. It was one way and now it's not another way. It's completely different. It's upside down. And then he says there are psalms of what he calls reorientation or new orientation. And that is life is not what it used to be, but it's new. It's different, right? And it's only new or different because we've grown and we're coming out of a place of disorientation. So life only makes sense if we only have a new orientation because it has been disoriented. You can't move from orientation to new orientation. You can only move from orientation to disorientation to new orientation or to reorientation. And that just resonates so much with me right now because for many of us, life has been oriented around a certain way of doing things and a certain way of living and a certain way of being in this world. And it's normal, right? But something has come along that's completely disoriented our lives, and some maybe more than others. But the reality is all of us are disoriented in some way. And the goal is not to go back to orientation or back to normal, right? Whatever that was. We don't want to go back. We want to go into something new. If we're to leave this stage of disorientation and go back to what we were, I would see it as a failure, right? That we didn't learn, that we didn't grow, right? We want to go back to some things, but we don't want to go back to exactly what it was. We want something new. It's like when I work with couples and I tell them, when something has happened, we don't want to go back to the old marriage. There are many good things about the old marriage, right? We don't throw it all away, but we want something new. Why go back? Why even come to therapy if you want to go back, right? We want to move forward. And so I think we're just in this season of life that we need to realize there was a way of doing things and we're not going back there. We want to hold on to some of those things for sure. And there's lots of things I want to hold on to. But we're in a season of disorientation, and it's okay. We need to acknowledge that we're disoriented, and we want to move into something completely new, a new orientation, a reorientation of life. And if you come from a faith perspective again, or a reorientation of what God wants of us in our lives. If you don't come from that faith perspective, that's okay. But to imagine life differently in a new way. So from orientation to disorientation to new orientation. Again, you can't have new orientation without disorientation. And we're disoriented right now, and that's okay. And we don't want to go back to normal. We want to hold on to some things, but we want some new things. And so, yeah, just think about that season we're in right now, this disorientation, and just acknowledge we're in it, and that's okay. We're going to be in it, and we're going to dream about and pray about and imagine what new orientation, what new life can be. And it will be also completely different than we ever could have imagined in a lot of ways, right? But that's the only way through growth in any way. If we're doing executive coaching, if we're doing counseling, if we're doing pastoral ministries, if we're teaching, if we're loving in relationships, it's about that journey of growth that only can take us from orientation to disorientation to new orientation. You know, having a baby is about being disoriented, right? Life is a certain way, and then you're disoriented, and then you reorient life in a new orientation, a new way. But you don't go back, right? You move forward in a new way, holding on to some stuff that's important. And so I'm just hoping to communicate a sense of peace and calm to you and let you know it's okay. We're just disoriented, and that's a part of journey. It's a part of life. This is not unexpected. It's a part of the human story. It's a part of the human condition. And that's why a book that's thousands of years old in writings, the Psalms, still resonates with us, right? It's a framework that is as old, right, as we can imagine, but it still resonates with us today. So peace be with all of you. Stay safe out there. I'm going to go in and eventually find some groceries here and play it safe in that way as well. So take care. Have a good day.